Get out there and give him a hug. But now to America's heartache over the Connecticut school massacre, which is rapidly turning to anger and despair. As President Obama mourns with families of the dead children, calls for tighter gun controls are getting louder and louder in America and here. Martin King looks at the fallout.
I think America has a lot to learn from Australia's work in 1997 with the gun buyback.
Governments have a licence to lead as well as to be led. Obama has a particular licence to lead as well as to be led on this issue. Now is his moment, now is his time to step up.
America, land of the free and home of gun freedom.
I want enough lead to physically knock somebody down. 9mm won't physically knock somebody down.
Australia, young and free and home to gun control.
The school is in lockdown.
And here's the price of gun freedom, paid in full, in blood, by innocent children and teachers. This time round, 20 school children, 5 teachers and the monster's own mother.
1 in 3 American households has a gun, and that has terrible consequences when a teenager gets depressed or a family dispute gets out of control.
The task of identifying victims of a mass shooting is grim enough, but the tender age of the school children makes this all that much harder.
It took one man with 3 guns 8 minutes to murder 27 people.
A woman sitting in amongst it all with a baby on her knee. I went up to her and I said, "Can I help you?" She said, "No, I'm just sitting with my husband," and he was dead on the floor.
In our own terrible gun tragedy, Martin Bryant used 2 guns to kill 35 people at Port Arthur in Tasmania.
There's somebody going crazy shooting people here.
The difference between the 2 countries, Australia took the guns off the street. America is making more. Australia, then led by Prime Minister John Howard and Deputy PM Tim Fischer, had the guts to look down the barrel at the detractors and save lives. In the US, debate has raged for decades and the death toll spirals. Columbine.
Americans are sick to the stomach over another school tragedy.
Virginia Tech.
A university that will never forget its place in history.
And now, Connecticut.
If you can't find your children, they're dead in the building.
Film stars.
I'm Chuck Norris, a black belt patriot. If some thug breaks into my home, I'd prefer he look down the barrel of my gun.
Talk show hosts.
We want sensible gun control legislation. We are the voice of the majority of Americans.
And politicians blow hard and bluster, but the cold hard stats are murderous. 300 million guns can't be wrong.
And I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you.
Since Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy's assassinations in 1968, 1 million Americans have been killed by guns. Every year now, almost 100,000 people are killed or wounded by gunfire in the land of the free.
We've come in here to get the AK-47s.
4 years ago, we went to Texas. Newly elected Barack Obama promised a crackdown on guns, and the Texans were traumatized.
You can take our mother before you can take our guns.
In panic, they rushed gun shops and stockpiled.
I've got a 9mm, a Smith & Wesson 9mm, but I want to upgrade to something bigger.
The president will probably want to get rid of.
Have you got one of those?
I've got 4.
America can learn a great deal from the Australian experience and can recognise that you can have both. That you can have that culture of sports shooting that Americans prize so dearly, but without the tragic gun violence that plagues so many American lives every year.
Labor politician Andrew Lee is the author of one of the leading studies on the effect of the Australian gun buyback scheme.
There are Australians who wouldn't be walking the streets if it wasn't for the gun buyback. It saved about 200 lives a year. It continues to make Australia a safer place today. We were already seeing a fall in firearms suicide and homicide rates, but they plummeted after that gun buyback.
I am quietly proud of playing a small role with regard to the gun law reform led by John Howard. Much more to be done.
Deputy PM in the Howard era, Tim Fischer.
15 times. That's the differential If you're considering going to the USA, just remember you are 15 times more likely to be shot dead in the USA than in Australia. It just shows how crazy the USA is, and they are going to pay a price, and sadly they paid an awful price in the circumstances in Connecticut.
It's devastating. My thoughts and prayers go out to those families, because I know exactly what they're going through.
Today, Port Arthur in Tasmania was a scene of serenity. Neil Loy was the mayor at the time of the Tasman Peninsula.
We've moved on. We've 17 years, and John Howard brought the gun laws in. Some people hate him and some people loved him, but I think that was a good thing.
Nobody here wants to talk or think about guns, but in America, only in America, the powerful gun lobby will defend to the death that all-important Second Amendment, enshrined in their Constitution, the right to bear arms. Now it's fighting to expand laws to carry concealed weapons.
So, you can ban all the guns in the world, but those sort of people, they'd find some other way of doing it.
Independent MP Bob Catter argues that gun bans are counterproductive and dangerous.
But, you know, I think you create a morbid fascination when you ban them, and I think that has a lot to do with some of these terrible incidents that are occurring.
With 300 million guns, the killing will continue. The question is, what price gun freedom?
And thankfully, since we changed our gun laws, we've been spared another Port Arthur. But tonight, the world is still wondering what turned young Adam Lanza into a mass murderer.